Let's go into part two of mindset. There's really only two states that you can live in: suffering or happiness. And that's really it. You're either suffering or you're happy. Now, someone that owns a business or someone that works long hours might tell you they're stressed. Well, why are you stressed? Well, I have to get this done, right? Well, what happens if you don't get this done? Well, no, I have to get this done. I've got to meet this deadline. I've got to move forward. And you know what? I know that. I know that stress, and that's really suffering because I have a lot of deadlines. I've got multiple businesses. And so I understand that suffering, but I really, really stay in a state of happiness now. I've really found a happy place. And the reason why is because I choose to look at the reward versus the fear, because fear will drive more action than anything else. And it's so true. Fear will drive more action than anything else. But if you're taking action out of fear, can you truly be happy? Can you truly be happy if what you're doing is because you're scared of what will happen if you don't get it done? And so meeting deadlines and doing different things like that, those are all a part of life. But when we're achievers, and I'm a high achiever, and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing, for much of my adult life, I found that I was suffering, because I was moving so hard and so fast to meet a deadline. And really, there wasn't a lot of consequence if I didn't get it done. There really wasn't. I put a lot of fear on myself. And so I always pushed and pushed and pushed. And so pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we don't have to suffer. When we suffer, we're focused on ourselves. I, me. And so when we see a problem and we start to dwell on that problem, we start to suffer. Now, when we initially have a problem, there's pain. There's pain in that. But in order to avoid the suffering, we have to work on the solution, which we talked a little bit more about in part one. So it's very, very important that we always are moving more towards the solution than we are focusing on the problem. And it's also important that we really get into a positive mindset by focusing on the reward of getting something done instead of the fear of what will happen if we don't. Now, in the beginning, we might have to focus on the fear to get us moving. But the bottom line is that if you want to overcome the suffering and you want to overcome the stress, is what achievers call it. And I'm an achiever. I'm a high achiever. I'm an overdoer. And so I made an 89 in college in one of my classes, and I absolutely flipped my lid. I'm like, I've got an 89. I'm going to have it forever. And you know what? An 89 is a pretty good grade. And so I was a little bit hard on myself. And so I began to suffer over that grade and try to push harder and push harder. And listen, I'm not telling you not to make straight A's. I'm not telling you not to push. I'm telling you not to suffer. Don't focus on yourself so much as focus on the process and enjoying the process, and focus on the positive mindset. If it's a problem, let's focus on the solution. Let's plan for the future, but let's not focus on every little thing that could go wrong. Suffering is when we're always fighting a battle before it even happens, and then a lot of times it doesn't even happen. And I used to be that way. Something would happen with a bill or insurance or something like that. And sure enough, I would get the letter on like a Friday night. And I'm like, this can't be. It's got to be a mistake. And it was. It was a mistake, but I suffered all weekend thinking, how am I going to handle this? No one's around to talk to. And then Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I'm already calling. And of course, they're not in the office until 8:01. And 8:01, they finally answer. And to come to find out it's some kind of a mistake, or it's some kind of an easy thing. We also tend to get very defensive when we don't think that something's going to work in our favor, or something that we think, is fair. And we think we're going to have to fight for it. So we start to plan, and we start to get defensive, and we get tensed up, and we get stressed. And, I remember, at the martial arts school, at one time I had contracts, a 3-year contract, right? And I have this guy, great parent, kids are doing great in martial arts, been with me for 2 years. He comes in, really nice guy, really super nice guy, always had very good conversations. And just out of the blue, he comes into my office, and he sits down, he sits back, and he says, I'm going to sue you. And I'm like, you're going to sue me? I said, I don't know what we're talking about. He goes, I'm going to picket your school. And I said, okay. And he goes, I'm going to. At this point, I don't even know what we're talking about. And I said, well, okay. I said, if you're going to do that, I would get a yellow sign, with big red letters so everyone could see it. And I wouldn't do it right here on the sidewalk. I would go out by the street so everybody on the main street would say, "Oh, that's how it's going to be, huh?" And I said, "Well," I said, "Sir, I don't even know what we're talking about. You're telling me you're going to pick at my school, and I don't even know what we're talking about." And he said, "Well, you can't get out of the contract." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, I didn't even know you were unhappy." And he said, "Well, we're not unhappy. They just want to do something else." And I said, "Well, okay. I mean, at what point were you going to come and ask me what you needed to do to cancel?" And he just kind of looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "All you need to do is come in here and tell me that you guys, we're looking into some other activities, and I'd be more than happy to take care of it for you. It's really that easy." I said, "But you came in here all defensive, wanting to fight, and you hadn't even talked to me, hadn't even let me know there was an issue." And so after talking with them, I talked to them, and they decided to stay a little longer, and we worked on some motivation and some inspiration for the kids, and they stayed a whole nother year. And so that's a classic example of fighting a battle before an enemy's even on the field. There was no enemy. There was no battle here. And so we always want to focus on the worst case scenario, and we really need to focus on the positive. Go into it with the mindset of, everything's going to work out. Be courteous and respectful when you're dealing with someone there could be a conflict. But focus on the solution. Let's not focus on the problem. And don't focus on yourself. Focus on everyone else as far as what you're trying to achieve. And I think you're going to be successful. I think you're going to find happiness.